Okay, Natasha, you're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? If you can hear me well, please tell me, because we need to check the technology first of all. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much for your many smiles, and hellos. That's always very pleasant. Yes. Thank you very much, Yulia, for inviting me today. So I can just share my screen, right, with my slides. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yep. All right. So I'm going to start sharing. Just a sec. Let's make sure that everything is ready. All right. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, today we're going to talk and actually try out a couple of things connected with setting up speaking activities. And we're going to talk a little bit about using vocabulary in connection with those speaking activities in a lesson. So I really ask you to participate, because I'm going to ask you to use the chat box quite a few times during our session today, and write something there. And also there's going to be one big task for you all. So if you can also try to do this task, because it's always interesting to try it out and see how it works before you try it with your students. Okay, do you agree to participate actively in the activities? If yes, could you please send me something in the chat box as well, please? Okay, someone said okay, great. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, and another thing, if you sometimes want to switch on your camera, that's fine, because it's always nice to see your faces. Anyway, we're going to start today with a quote connected with a speaking lesson. And this is a quote by Scott Sonbury. I'm sure you know Scott Sonbury. And this is what he said. You can see it on the screen. A leaf for its food for some creatures, shade for others, or building material for still others. Could you please think a little bit about this quote in connection with speaking lessons and all speaking activities that you set up in class, and think what food stands for in a speaking lesson, what shade stands for, and what is the building material. How these three things, food, shade, and building material, are connected with speaking lessons. You could also share in the chat box. So let's see what you think. Food, shade, building material. We're thinking about a speaking lesson. But could you please specify when you say vocabulary or words, so which of these things you're talking about? Yeah, so we've got food, shade, and building material. So is vocabulary food or shade or building material of a speaking lesson? We need more opinions in the chat box. Varvara is so far the bravest one. I'm gonna wait for 3 more seconds. Please feel free to tell us. No idea, it's okay. Elena thinks that building material is vocabulary. All right. Topic is food. Okay, thanks very much. Woo, it's working. Yeah, vocab grammar. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for some ideas. All right. So let's go back to the quote and see what the author of this quote actually meant. So you're quite right that when we say food, this is the level of ideas in the speaking lesson. You know, so something the students might be talking about. So food is about the topic, what you said, or ideas. Then shade, this is probably the trickiest one. I agree that the building material is about the language that the students have to use to express the ideas. So they could be vocab, as you said, or grammar. And then if we talk about shade, so this is also quite interesting, that shade in a speaking lesson is support the teacher gives the students while they're doing speaking tasks. And we're going to see what is support, what it actually means, and how the teachers can give this support to the students. But if you look at this quote, this is actually something that you need if you want to set up an effective speaking activity. You need all the three elements: food, shade, and building material. All right? Now, I'm going to ask you to actually do a very short speaking task, and please try to participate if you can. So if you are using a laptop or a computer here, using Zoom, and if you can use your mobile phone to record your voice, that's ideal, okay? So then just find a voice recorder, because you're going to use it for about 40 seconds, not more. If it's not possible because you are using your mobile phone, your smartphone, for this conference, then you can just do this task in your head, okay? Or just speaking to yourself orally in front of the computer with the mic off, okay? But still try to do this task. So think about the lockdown time that we've all been together, yeah? And now you're also at home probably, or in a certain space, joining this conference in front of the computer. So could you please look around your room and tell us how much time you have spent in your room in the last couple of months? Could you write it in the chat box? Like, how much time have you spent in this particular room where you are now? 1 month. Non-stop. Okay, well, probably more than usual. Yeah. Any other periods of time? 2 weeks. Okay. Quite a lot. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So I'm actually working in the kitchen. You can't see it because of the virtual background, but it's my kitchen with the fridge just very close to it, okay? And because of everything that's been happening online, I think I've spent a few months in the kitchen, all right? And, you know, probably a bit too much. So could you please now look around this room where you've spent so many months, okay? Look around it carefully. You can see the instruction on the slide as well. And record if you can, or just talk through a 40-second message to a member of your family. This could be any member of your family, okay? Your mom, your daughter, your son, your granny, whoever you like, your husband maybe, your wife, you decide, and say what things, sorry, could you please turn your mic off? Thank you. What things you like and don't like about this room. Also say why not. Then suggest better ways this room could be used. Maybe you've got some new insights after spending so many months there. And choose one of the suggestions and say what things you need to buy to redesign this room. Like get rid of the laptop, for example, completely. Or put in a bed because you need some sleep-in facilities now because you have to spend so much time there, right? So once again, I'm going to be silent for about a minute or so. You look around the room you're in and you either record a message using your phone or just talk through it, but try to do it, saying the things you can see on the slide. The message should be 40 seconds long. Is the task clear? If it is, could you please put plus or something in the chat box? All right. Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, so now silence for a minute. Please do the task. The instruction is on the screen. Enjoy. Okay, very good. Yay, good. All right, we're coming back then. Okay, so a message, and let's see what you actually knew about the task before you did the task. Okay, so you knew how long the message is, you knew what points you have to cover in your little speaking task, and you also knew the audience, right? Because I said that you have to record this message, send this message to a member of your family, yeah, which is also important because the audience actually tells us how formal or informal the message has to be, and so on. But imagine you have done this task with your students, and now you need to assess it somehow. So you need to tell your students whether they've done it well or something, something is wrong about the message they've recorded, they've created. Do you know how to assess it? Like, what can show you, and your students, obviously, how good the task has been done? What do you think? What do we need to be able to assess the task? You can also write in the chat box. How can you assess it? Good or bad? Well, I can't see any opinions yet, but I can tell you, well, if you want to assess any kind of task, you need some criteria, right? So, and you didn't have any. So the only thing you knew was what to record, the audience, as I said, and the length. But I didn't tell you about any criteria showing the quality of the task, right? And something that the students could actually use as guidelines for the task. So we are going, to work out these criteria with you together right now, right? So I'm going to show you this slide. It's empty so far. I've only added the first one here, right? Which is say hello. And that's it. Because, I mean, when you record a message, you obviously want to say hello to someone you are talking to, right? So this could be the first criteria because of the genre of the speaking task. So we said that you recorded a message to a member of the family. So what can you say about the formality of the greeting? How could you greet someone? What could you say? Should it be formal, informal? What words could you use? Also, please write in chat. Yeah, it could be hey, thank you. Hey, or could be hi, right? Hey, honey. Nadezhda, this is so sweet. Literally. Okay, yeah. So something very, very warm, showing that the distance between you and your family member is not very long. Okay, so we say informal, and everything else could be, of course, negotiated with your learners. Brilliant, right. So what would be the next criteria? I think Oksana said something very important, yeah? Oksana said that all aspects that you had are covered, right? So this is also an important one in terms of the meaning of the message, of the content. All right, what other important criteria you think should be followed by the students so that this message is a good one, all right, and could get a high grade? Linking words, yeah, so we could also use the word coherence. So the message should be coherent, sort of the parts of the message should be connected with each other. One way of making sure it's like that is using linking words. Yeah, could you give a few examples, because the students would definitely benefit from a couple of examples. Again, remember the register and the level of formality. Yeah, so we also need some informal linking words. So what could this be? What signals could you use? All in all, anyway, yeah. How about the beginning? Let's start from the beginning, yeah? So you say, hey, and then you say, I don't like the room. This is not coherent. You want to signal the beginning of your little talk, yeah? Because it's weird. You say, hey, honey, I don't like the kitchen. So, well, his room. All right. So could we say, like, how are you? What's up? What's up? How are things? Something like that. It's the beginning, right? But then what phrase could sort of build a little bridge to the main part of your message? I'd like to, it's very formal, Alexander. It's like, I'd like to tell you about the kitchen. Our kitchen is not really the kitchen I've been dreaming of. So it's slightly more formal, but what do you think? Is the person you're talking to, is your family member, do they expect that you're going to decide to redesign your kitchen suddenly? Everything has been so good, and then suddenly you're like, do you like everything about her? You know, that's nice. That's already that's already showing, telling. Yeah? Do you like everything about our room? Even before that, Yelena. So it could be like, I've been thinking about my room. I want to tell you something. I love this. Yeah. You know what? You really, yeah. So look, if you look at these ones below, I want to tell you something, or you know what? I really think we should do something about our kitchen. Yeah, good. By the way, it's tricky because by the way signals that you suddenly start talking about a side object. So it's not the main topic of your message. If you say, by the way, someone called me, so you suddenly remember something that's not really related to the main topic. But dear listen, with a pause. But anyway, seriously, these ones are great. You know, they would be nice signaling phrases. So not only linking words actually help a speaker achieve coherence, right? So signaling phrases like, you know what? I really think we should do something about our room. You know, that's a nice one. Yeah. You know what? You like, you know what? Okay. You know what? Yeah. Yeah, that would be a nice beginning because you sort of prepare the speaker for something you're going to say. You know, in some other phrases, that's just an example. Obviously, in a real lesson, you would brainstorm more and put them up on the whiteboard for the students or any board. All right, what else? Apart from the text being coherent, here's the slide with the task. Sorry. Yeah. Apart from the text being coherent, using some signaling phrases, covering all the 3 points here, thinking about the register and the level of formality, what other criteria do you think are important? Think about a message. Lisa also said, I saw in the Insta that, yeah, also good beginning because you need to sort of start it off. So you've started off, you used some linking words. What else? Could be this, could be intonation, but think more about recording a message as a real life task, okay? So forget a little bit the language, forget the accuracy, okay? Don't think about it right now. Forget probably some problems with pronunciation and intonation, of course they should be looked at, but think about creating a message as a real life task more. Yes, the length of the message, I agree. If it says 40 seconds, it's 40 seconds, not 2 minutes. It's very difficult to listen to an 8-minute message on the phone, you know, when you record it. Yeah. Okay. Pauses, right? So it has to be clear. All right. What else? Think about the nature of a message more. Forget the language. I mean, the accuracy part. What else is important? So you said that we've started the message. We've tried to make it coherent, but do you need to wrap it up somehow? Do you need to finish it? No? Yeah. So I think that we need to put it somewhere here. So you cover all the things, you're coherent, yeah, and also wrap it up, wrap your message up somehow. How could you wrap up the message? Remember, you want to redesign the room, which means money usually, and a lot of effort and mess at home. What phrase could you use to wrap it up? Forget grammar so far, right? We're still thinking about the message itself. What do you think about it? Varvara said, yep, nice, because you're not categoric then. And you sort of show that you're still interested in your family's opinion. So this is nice, 50% of success. How else could you wrap it up? The message. Any other suggestions? No. Why don't we? Nice, Joseph. Thank you very much. Because again, it's sort of why don't we is a very delicate way, yeah, of sort of pushing your family member. How about redesigning our room a bit? I like your a bit. So this is also, you know, there's a nice touch there. Why don't we? Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Okay, so we can actually go on and on. So see here, we're inventing the criteria on the spot, which is not very easy, but you get the point. It's not only about accuracy, like using the right grammar, which could be part of it. As someone said, imperative, no imperative, like ways of formulating maybe your request in a polite way and so on. But it's also important to think about the register, how to start a message. So thinking about a message as a real life task more, how to structure it, what signaling phrases to use to make it coherent, what linking words to use, how to wrap it up, and then probably the next part will be grammar. Thank you, Kirill. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah. So after you've formulated this criteria, or probably in a real life lesson, you would basically prepare the criteria before the lesson, but it's always nice to ask your learners to brainstorm the criteria of a good message like that, because they've heard messages on the phone. It doesn't matter which language, right? And then sort of reformulate the criteria and add a bit more. Yeah, the criteria could be different, look, depending on the task. Yeah, so maybe think about a real life message basically. But then after that, as you want to make your students do it better, you could also help a little bit with some useful language. It's like the second part. And look at these phrases that you can see here in on this slide. You see they're here in 4 blocks. They're color-coded. So what do you think they are for? Let's look at the black ones. What are the black ones for, you think? What's the function of these phrases? Beginning, yeah. Remember that little bridge when you suggested, you know what? Yeah. So this could be this, and yeah, woo, get attention, great news, surprise your speaker a little bit. So this is a nice bridge before, yeah, the main part of the message. You need to start off somehow, right? Guess what? I've got news for you. Are you sitting down? And so on. All right. Then how about the green ones? What do you think they're for? Here's the task again, just for you to remember what you had to do. So, right, remember you had to say what things you like, what things you don't like about the room. So you could actually use the phrases to prioritize some of them. Yeah, like the main thing, or what I like most of all, I really like da 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 da. But then you can also move on to the things that you don't like and say, let's face it, our table is rubbish. You know, we've been using it for 15 years, so it's time to change it. Or to be honest, let's be realistic. You know, we can't use this fridge anymore and so on. So you could use some of the phrases to show something you don't like. How about the red ones? What's the function of these phrases here? The red ones. Yeah, so making suggestions. So you remember that it was the second point of the task. Yeah, so you actually have to suggest, to give some ideas here. And how about the purple one at the very end, at the bottom of the slide? What is it for? The purple one. So what I plan to do is, look, here's the task. Exactly. So remember, it's the final point. Choose one of the suggestions, say what things you need to buy to redesign the room. And then as you decided, after that, you could wrap it up saying, so what do you think about all this? Yeah, shall we do that? And so on. Use just some nice phrases in the chat box. Yeah, well done. So what do you think? Useful phrases, would they help the message to be more coherent? Would you like to use some of them? Not all of them, of course, but some of them? Yes, no? Yeah, why not? All right, cool. This is what you're going to do now, all right? Because could you please take a picture, if you can, of these phrases? And you know what? I'm just going to copy them into the chat box for you so that you can see them there. Yeah, here they are, all of them. So now you're going to do this task once again. So we're going to have a few seconds of silence, but this time it's going to be slightly more challenging. As you can see on the slide, the task is the same, almost, but now you have to do it in 30 seconds, not 40 seconds, but 30 seconds. And try to think about all the things that we've discussed now. Yeah, so as it's a message, remember the register, remember to say hello in an informal way, remember to signal the beginning of the message somehow. You can use some of the phrases, they're in the chat box, remember. Also, try to make your message coherent. Again, the phrases are here. Try to use some more link words depending on what you're saying, because I can't hear you, obviously. And remember to wrap it up and call for action in a polite, delicate way. It's always nice to show that you're interested in the other person's opinion, all right? So try to do that. And we're going to meet again in about a minute, okay? So that everybody has time. But the message should be 30 seconds long. You can also say done in the chat box. Good luck, second try. Done. Okay, great. Still waiting for a few seconds. It's important to do the task. Thank you. Okie dokie. All right. Yeah. What are your feelings now? If you compare your previous message, because you remember what you were saying, yeah? And the message you've recorded now, what are your feelings, honestly? Like, do you think you've achieved more? Do you think your second message is better than the first one? Are you satisfied more? Better? Good? Any other feelings? You know, because students feel something about the tasks. Yeah, second is better. It's interesting what Luda is saying. It was easier. You felt more relaxed. Yeah, so Svetlana says that I don't think the ending doesn't seem like the end. No, it's just the beginning of, a message like that is just the beginning of a conversation. Yeah, but so it could be a different wrap up, seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of negotiation, and the teacher could recommend some sort of, wrap up depending on your purposes. Redesign is fine, basically. I mean, you could say change, but I don't think redesign would actually affect the register that much. Lydia says that the message has gained a structure, so was more structured, better structured. Is there anyone who forgot to say hello in the first message, I wonder? And goodbye. This is what happens. It's like in the classroom, we focus so much on the actual content, right? Like something I have to cover in my task, that we completely forget about the real life nature of something we're saying. Yeah. So the real life nature of a message like that, like in our situation, which is not a very good idea, because if you don't focus on it in the classroom, it means that the speaking you are teaching is not actually the speaking that you can hear in real life. And that basically, if we look at speaking as a skill, yeah, it is subdivided into so many sub-skills, and there are lots of genres, and you have to take it into account because you want your students to sound natural. That's why, this is just an example of a speaking task you could do, where you focus more on the real life nature of a particular text, and then you sort of give advice to the students, saying what to change, how to make it better, and so on. We're going to unpick this task a little bit more. Unpick means analyze what we did, yeah? So what do you think if you analyze how we did it? What kind of approach did we use to the speaking task in terms of methodology? What do you think? So first you did the task, remember? Then we looked at it, brainstormed some criteria, brainstormed some language. Then I also fed some language. I gave you some useful language you could use in your message. And then you did the task again. Yeah, but it was a bit more challenging. Absolutely. Task-based learning. It was a task-based approach, because here, remember, we focused on the real life nature of the task, and the task itself was a real life task. Because you could imagine a message like that. Yeah, so not like a test or anything. What do you think about this structure? Do you like it? Do you think it's a good idea to use it with your learners to teach them speaking? Again, why not? So we could share a little bit here. I'll show you the structure while you're writing something. Yeah, so this is what we did, task-based. Yeah, why? I like task-based in terms of teaching speaking a lot. Remember, our topic today is speaking activities promoting thinking, okay? So, why? Why is it nice? How do you think it could help promote thinking? Yeah, this is interesting. Real life, exactly. Real life is motivating. When it's like for you, there was a task for you, yeah, and I was thinking about the context I wanted to create for you, and I realized that you're all teachers, and I'm sure you've been spending a lot of time in front of the screen all the time, and I'm sick and tired of spending so much time in this room, seriously. Yeah, so real life context, something that relates to the group of students you're teaching. Yeah, makes them, it's interesting what you say, feel the language. Well, let's analyze the language. Yeah, makes them think what kind of language they could use, what's the function of the language, not just drill and use. And maybe, you know, when you ask the students first, it's also nice to brainstorm some of the ideas and reactivate some of the language they already know if they're not beginner students. Yeah. Elisa says that it's time consuming. It's not more time consuming than actually, let's say, a PPP lesson. So it could be done in the same amount of time. Just make sure that the message is not very long. Yes, basically it depends on how long the task is. Yeah, so if you want to do the whole cycle, then it's just that the task should be a bit shorter. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. Some students don't realize that the language is more just vocab and grammar, exactly, and you really want to show it, including the things about don't forget to say hello, don't forget it's informal, you know, don't forget to show that you're interested in someone's opinion as part of the criteria, exactly. Yeah. So this is a little task, and I wanted to ask you something. Did we have any vocabulary input for the speaking task in your case? Like, did I teach you any vocabulary maybe related to the furniture in different rooms or other stuff? Why did I not? Because I say we brainstormed the phrases, yeah? So this is also, well, these are functions and speaking strategies. You could say there's an overlap between, yeah, lexis and grammar here, but I didn't really teach you any vocabulary, right? Because you didn't need it. I mean, I assumed that you know, you're expert users of English, obviously, so you can describe the room and you have enough vocabulary already to describe the room. That's why I didn't do that. But if you teach lower level students, where do you think vocabulary could come in? Good question. This is what we're talking about, Yelena. You could grade it. Yeah, it's for you, exactly. I mean, not only for you. I mean, this task could be used with pre-in students or in students. They would just show a completely different vocabulary in the task. And of course, you would reduce the number of phrases for them. You always think how many constituents, because when you teach some new functional language or strategies, you want to, you know, practice them a little bit, maybe to say them a few times. It's all time consuming. So you will just reduce the number of phrases and grade vocabulary more. But where could you feed the vocab in this lesson? So let's see what you think. After the first message has been made to see, yeah, right. Yeah, the number of the things to be suggested could be limited, exactly. Yeah, but I like what Elisa says. If you look at the chat box, vocabulary should come after the first round of speaking, after the first task. I agree. I don't mean where physically. It could be chat, could be a slide that you use as your board, or if it's an offline lesson, the real board, doesn't matter much. But I agree that after the first round of speaking, because then, you know, we always say that you don't have to be proactive with vocabulary, like teach vocabulary before the students do a task, because then you don't really diagnose their needs, and then you spend a lot of time on something they might know. But if you teach vocabulary after the first speaking round, that could be a great idea, because then you see, right, the first stage is diagnostic. This is what my students can do now. The learners can also feel it and say, let's make it a bit better. There is another nice way of feeding vocab, like a more real life one. You might like it. I don't know, you might not, but you know, we always choose. There's a very funny phrase that people use in informal conversation when they for example, forgot the name of an object or what something is called, and very often people use the word thing or a thingy sometimes, and you would say, it's that thingy, that clip thing for holding papers together. Yeah, so it's that thingy, that you could use an adjective or a noun there for the word thing for doing something. And then as an option, you could teach this phrase, because it's also about speaking, right? It's also a functional phrase that your learners could easily use in real life if they forgot the word. I mean, it happened to me so many times in a conversation with, English speaking people, once I forgot how to say Silver Rush. I was talking about a little Czech town where it happened a few centuries ago, and I completely forgot the word. I was like, that thing which happens when, So you could also teach these phrase and suggest that the students use this phrase during the lesson if they need a word or a phrase, if they forgot maybe what a piece of furniture, I mean, if we go back to our task, is called, or whatever they need, if it slips. And then it could be introduced in the chat box, as Nadezhda suggests, or somewhere. It's good to use a chat box if we're talking about online lessons for some pop-up emergent vocabulary that your students need, because then you can save the chat box and then the students can take it home. And in this natural way, they can also learn quite a lot of vocabulary without focusing on it in a sort of forceful way. And it should be more memorable, because these are vocabulary items they really needed for their little message or whatever you decided to use as a speaking task. And they were all introduced in the chat box, so you were responding to the students' needs. Also a nice way of doing it. Yeah, so if it's a speaking lesson or speaking activity, I would really make a huge focus on vocab, because it is time consuming and you don't actually know what your students need, because they also pick up quite a lot of language outside the classroom. So it would be a good way, and a nice informal phrase to use in real life. Yeah, so also a bit of speaking there. Okay, so as we said, sometimes try to be reactive, so respond to what is actually happening in the classroom, then proactive, and then it tends to be more memorable for the students because they realize they need it. Okay, then I'm going to show you what you could do with this emergent vocabulary after a speaking activity. So for example, your students asked you about quite a few items that they needed, right? And you want to make sure they keep using them, right? And I just put 2 activities for you here in the slide. There are many more, but I promise a list of useful resources at the end of the presentation. The first one, I really like it. It's taken from the book by Leo Sullivan, which is called Lexical Grammar. And here's the book. I can show it to you. Yeah, and this book contains quite a lot of nice activities connected with learning new chunks, mostly chunks of vocabulary and grammar. But this activity could be used just with some new vocabulary. Yeah, so I'm sure you're reading the description already. But basically, the teacher has to be really, really attentive during the lesson and take notes, putting down or maybe typing somewhere if it's an online lesson, some of the emergent vocabulary. And then at the end of the lesson, when you're done with all your speaking tasks and you want, a short vocabulary follow on, you could actually read a few sentences containing the chunks or maybe some phrases that you fed during the lesson, you taught them, and making deliberate mistakes there. So if it's a little collocation, for example, you could just choose a wrong word in it, a wrong verb or something. And when the students notice it, they need to shout out and say, no, you're wrong. And then try to remember the right chunk. So this is one activity, a nice consolidation one, and you don't have to use it in the same lesson. You can also use it later, you know, as part of your spaced repetition. If you want to go back to some lessons using some previous lessons. The second activity that I suggest is easy peasy lemon squeezy, as they say. Do they say that? Maybe it's already old-fashioned. But I called it here, were you paying attention? So again, at the end of a lesson like that, after the students all recorded the messages, after you did probably some kind of peer correction or a peer reformulation, when the students maybe listen to each other's messages, look at the criteria and give each other feedback, is always good, you know, things like that. Then you just ask learners to tell the class about the redesigned room they liked best. This could also give the learners a reason to listen to each other's stories, because they need to change, and they also have to decide why they think, you know, there are some great ideas. There could be a few winners. I mean, it doesn't have to be one. Like, I like that one because I like the idea of turning a table into something else, a swimming pool, right? And here, just allow your students to let their imagination go. And also, they summarize the changes and say why they like the ideas. And this way, you know, again, in a natural way, you can motivate the learners to use the vocabulary that emerged in the lesson in the context of the messages. All right. Yep. So here we go. We need to start summarizing what we've discussed. Yeah. And I want to go back to the quote that we had at the very beginning. Let's look here. Yeah. So do you remember what Thornberry said about an effective speaking activity or an effective speaking lesson? So if you go back to our task, you can use the chat now again, please. What do you think? What was the food, if any? What was the shade? And what was the building material of our mini speaking lesson today? What do you think? Use the chat, please. We're going to wait for a few seconds because sometimes there's a delay. So what was the food? What was the shade? And what was the building material of our lesson? Yeah, Alif is the whole thing, actually. Yeah, so Alif is the whole speaking activity, everything we did. And then, yeah, sort of. I mean, if we think metaphorically again. Yeah, so food is the ideas, all the ideas of changing, yes, our room, connected with what we like, what we don't like, changing the room, so everything. Also, actually, how to start, how to, you know, show we're interested. So the level of ideas. I would say that useful phrases are more like building materials. Yeah, I agree with Natalia here, because, you know, that's more about vocab and grammar the students could use. Something we suggested, brainstormed, and then suggested more. Some speaking strategies. Yeah. Shade, I agree with Yaskul. Sorry, I don't know your name, I can't see it. But I agree that the criteria that we actually suggested functioned like the shade, because the criteria give the students support. They tell them how or what means a good message, right? Because without the criteria, it's not really clear. It's nice to give them a chance to, you know, give a go, just like that. Record the way you can do it, because then if we teach afterwards, after the first round of speaking, then there's a nice feeling of achievement in the learners at the end of the lesson, because they can see that the second task was much better already. But I agree that the shade gives the criteria, but not only the criteria. Something else gives shade, meaning support, to the students that can also improve the quality or what they actually say at the end. I would say informal phrases, building material. Everything about the language is building material. Motivation, thank you very much, Zoya. Exactly. This is also support, like give them a reason to speak. Teachers' feedback is the shade. Thank you very much, Elena, because this is also part of support. The number of attempts, exactly, you know, when the students know they will have another chance. This is nice, yeah, just because then you're not so, you know, stressed about the first one, like, oh no, I failed the task. You don't, you know that you'll have a chance to do it again. And also there is one more important thing, thinking time. It's important in any speaking lesson, well, writing lesson as well. Yeah, we're not talking about it, but still, if it's about production, and if, for example, look, in the second task, first of all, you had only 30 seconds, and then I asked you to use all those, no, not all those phrases, but some of those phrases, and we understand that for learners, it's actually quite challenging to use everything to connect the ideas, the building material together. That's why the thinking time you give the students is also important. Yeah, it's also about the shade. So if we think about some ideas to take away, here we go. Create the need to reason to do the task. You've said that. Support with ideas and vocabulary, thinking time, and allow the learners to use their expertise. So brainstorm first and just respond to their needs rather than being proactive. And Bloom's taxonomy is here because if you do that, that really stimulates thinking and makes your task a bit more cognitively, you know, higher than if you just feed everything beforehand. Here are some resources that I recommend. You know, some nice books and also a website that you can use for ideas. Documentary 24 is contains short videos on different topics, so they could be used as ideas for your students as well, the source of ideas. And do you have any questions? Do we have time for questions, Trendy English, or not?
1 minute.
1 minute, yeah. Do you have any questions or ideas before we finish? Please return to the previous slide. Yes, you're welcome. Will the people get the slides, Yulia?
Yeah, I'll tell it.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, one more back. Okay.
So, dear colleagues, you will get presentation, so don't worry.
Don't worry. Yeah, thank you very much for your participation. At the end of the slides, of course, I couldn't resist from telling you about the projects we're doing with Zhenya Barking. So have a look at them. There is a question. There, I can see one question. If you tried with this activity with intermediate students, what vocab did you have to teach? Well, pretty much depends on the group, Elisa. That's why they do the task on their own first, and then I can see where they've got problems. But I like to allow the students to ask for words they need. Like, look, I forgot that thingy that we use when, you know, I really like to do it in this way. Thank you very much.
So, dear colleagues, and at the end, as traditionally, please switch on your cameras, because we usually give our speakers a round of applause and we want to see your faces, so it's great.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah,
All right.
it's very pleasant. Hello, hello, hello.